Sagebrush. You'll travel for miles in the desert of northern Nevada and see nothing but tumbleweed and sun. Both seem to dominate the horizon. But if your travel should take you out not far from the city of Reno, you'll run across something else on the horizon. A vast ribbon of concrete and a rapidly approaching object that tells you you've reached the most important naval air station in the world. This is Fallon, often referred to as Strike University.
Before you can run philosophy. This is the first steps of getting everybody back together. A lot of new guys on board in all the different squadrons, and we've been working individually back at our home bases with our people in our squadron, but this is the first look for a lot of the new guys and for the old guys to get back together, get back into the books, back into strike planning, and get the air wing all talking the same language.
Lieutenant Ken Hitchner is like every other pilot in the Navy. He needs constant training in order to do his job well. He flies the A-7 Corsair, which is a combat-tested veteran airplane. But the A-7 does not do its job alone. It is part of a carrier air wing that is made up of many different kinds of airplanes. F-14 Tomcats, which serve as fighters. EA-6B Prowlers for electronic warfare, jamming enemy radars. A-6 Intruders to deliver heavy loads of ordnance. And S-3 Vikings to range far and wide hunting down enemy submarines. Ordinarily, these diverse airplanes are based separately. So in order to work as a cohesive unit, the air wing has to train together. And that is what Fallon is all about. Sit back and watch as we show you how the Navy turns a bunch of airplanes into a well-oiled machine. The commander of the air wing, or CAG, is Captain Tom Ford.
Teamwork is the whole key in the Navy. We work with a carrier battle group. We have individual components within that carrier battle group. And the carrier air wing is one of the most important parts of it to make sure that we can execute our mission.
In order to help a diverse group of pilots learn to operate as a unit, Fallon Naval Air Station brings together some of the most sophisticated training support ever devised. For example, if you want to find the instructors for the famous Top Gun Navy Fighter Weapons School, yep, look no further. These are the F-5s, flown by VFA 127, the aggressor squadron. The Navy's best pilots simulate the tactics of potential enemies to provide realistic adversaries for the carrier air wing. Here's Commander Al Gorthy.
The flying is tremendous. We have an opportunity to fly great airplanes. We fly both the A-4 and the F-5. The A-4 simulates in size and turning performance those qualities similar to the MiG-21. The F-5, on the other hand, is a very small airplane, but a high-performance airplane, supersonic. And that airplane simulates very closely in speed and performance the MiG-23.
And just in case you were wondering if the Top Gun instructors are as good as Hollywood has made them out to be, well, here's a pretty telling statement.
To a pilot, they know how to perform the airplane, they know what it takes, they know the airplane inside and out, And I would not want to be up against any one of these youngsters in the heat of the battle.
And now it's time to do what the training is all about, to take to the air for a coordinated strike. And that can be a task in and of itself, says Lieutenant Commander Jim Englander.
We have to coordinate the strike aircraft. Perhaps they want to make a certain time on target. We want to put enemy suppression assets in the air at the same time. We want to have electronic warfare jamming going on at a certain time, and we want to have our fighters in the proper position to defend the strike group. All of that coordination is what we train to. It's difficult. It takes tremendous training both on the ground and in the air, and it takes a tremendous amount of debriefing, which Strike View helps us with through the TACS range and through the instructors they have there.
Once in the air, the pilots settle down to the task at hand. This is the part that everyone enjoys the most. But it is only a small portion of the work that has gone into every facet of mission planning.
Flying is wonderful in naval aviation, but there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into every sortie. We looked at it recently, and for a 1.5-hour flight now, we're spending something like 7 hours of our day to accomplish that mission between briefing and debriefing.
And Winder copies 6+00, and we'll be marking on target 3.
And in they come. First, the A-7, showing its ability to put ordnance on the target unerringly.
Roger, from Leap Hot. Clear hot, Leap. That's clear, clear hot.
The A-7 is a visual bomber, unlike the A-6, which will do a more of a nighttime delivery. We pride ourselves on being pinpoint accurate, the best bombers in the air wing during visual deliveries. And we use a computer release system. It's not like the older Vietnam era A-7 when they first came out, or the A-4. So it takes a little bit away from the pilot in that you get to rely on the computer a little bit and the inertial measurement systems and that type of stuff. Very, very accurate bomber, and we use different computed symbology to put the bombs on target.
Next, the A-6s show up, using a slightly different technique. This airplane is an all-weather computer-guided precision bomber that packs the main punch of the carrier air wing, and the pilots know it.
The A-6 is, and I say this without any parochialism, the strike warfare arm of the air wing. It is the power projection aircraft. It's capable of carrying literally every type of ordnance that's in the fleet. And our mission is to project power across the beach when we're at sea, or to project power at land when we're not at sea, in defense of the country.
You're clear hot.
All of the information from the bombing range, the tactical aircrew training system, Top Gun, and many other sources is pulled together, and slowly a picture begins to emerge about how ready the air wing really is.
We want to make sure that when we are called upon to do business, that we're able to execute it professionally, safely, and in the best interest of the United States. And I think when we look at the events that have happened in the world over the last several years, that we have shown that the training that we're doing at Fallon and the unit training that we're executing has really paid off in making sure that we're doing it well.
At first light, the clock starts ticking. And for the next 24 hours, one of the most demanding tests of man and machine will take place. It will seem to go on forever, and yet will end before you know it. This is the world of the Carrier Air Wing, a day in the life of the USS Carl Vinson. Welcome aboard. Before a carrier deploys for up to 6 months at a time, the air group must, in effect, get in shape for the mission it will have to perform. In order to do that, what are called cyclic operations are performed. It is some of the most intense flying in the Navy, day and night, around the clock. And this is what it's like.
They're the largest warships in the world. They're among the most complex feats of construction, technology, and organization that exist. And it's one thing, if it's not possible perhaps to grasp all that goes on inside of it, it's possible without knowing too much to grasp the externals of it, to see one, to see the boundaries of it, and to see, if you have the good fortune to come out here, to see these launch and recovery operations and have some idea of the product of all of this.
Captain G.D. O'Brien, skipper of the USS Carl Vinson. Skipper, and in some ways, mayor of a small city, one that just happens to have an airport on its roof. For the first-time observer, the flight deck seems to be a bustling metropolis, a confusing flow of pedestrians mingled with rolling machinery, planes being towed everywhere, planes being worked on, sort of an awkward ballet with neither form nor substance. But nothing could be farther from the truth. In fact, each and every person here has a role to perform. USS Carl Vinson is home for two of the more colorful and well-known Navy squadrons. First, VF-51, the Screaming Eagles. This outfit sports a proud tradition of several MiG kills during the Vietnam War. The other unit is the Sundowners of VF-111. This unit traces its history back to World War II. It was then known as VF-11, flying Hellcats off the USS Hornet. The Sundowners also boast several MiG kills during the Vietnam War. Tomcat pilots enjoy perhaps a bit more notoriety these days because of the increasing number of portrayals in the movies. And they say, in general, those portrayals aren't too bad. Sundowner Lieutenant Randy Gus King.
I think most of the things that you've seen lately in the movies and on television have been real true to what we actually do. There's a little bit of artistic license there, I guess, you know, to get the public to buy a ticket and go see the movie itself. But in general, especially the movie Top Gun was pretty accurate.
The F-14 Tomcat is still one of the premier fighter planes in the world today. Although not quite as new as the Air Force F-15 and F-16, constant upgrades have kept it at the forefront. At around 60,000 pounds full load, it is one of the heavier airplanes to operate from a carrier. But as you can see, size has not proven to be a handicap when it comes to dogfighting. This plane turns and burns with the best of them. It also sports the AUG-9 weapon system with the Phoenix missile. The Tomcat can fire at multiple targets while continuing to track even more. In the future, the F-14D will take the stage with increased size, more powerful GE engines, and upgraded avionics. So count on the Tomcat to be in the starting lineup into the next century. Finally, like some referee hovering over the action, the plane guard helicopter climbs into place, just in case someone goes into the water. So with the introductions out of the way, let's get started. The launch, like everything else on a carrier, takes place right to the second. The Cat launch is the hottest ride in naval aviation, an experience that surpasses even the pilot's initial imaginings of what it would be like.
The first few times, you know, in the training command and stuff, they try to prepare you for it and give you an idea of what it's going to feel like, but it's just like being hit, you know, hit in the back with a moving sled, because the thing starts all of a sudden and accelerates you down, you know, up into the 100-knot range in less than 2 seconds. So it's just a real rapid acceleration that pushes you back into your seat, basically. But the ejection seat in the airplane and everything else is all designed to, you know, to do that. So it's not an uncomfortable feeling altogether. It's exhilarating and it's kind of fun, to tell you the truth.
Now, while we wait for the strike group to return, let's learn more about the USS Carl Vinson. The ship was commissioned in 1982, a Nimitz-class vessel. She's nearly 1,100 feet long and displaces 91,000 tons. The air wing is made up of 85 to 90 aircraft, and there are over 5,000 men supporting the operations you just saw. They're controlling the flow of airplanes on the deck, or working radar screens, or supplying everything from food to dental care to television. All this exists because the aircraft carrier is one of the key instruments of American foreign policy. The Carl Vinson may be called upon to go anywhere from the Aleutian Islands to the Persian Gulf, and that means readiness is important.
It means the men individually are well trained. It means that the components in the organization that they serve function well and fit together well with the others. And it means that the spirit that animates the whole, the will to win, is there. And those are the things we're constantly working towards.
Back from the morning mission, and the naval aviator is about to do what separates him from most every other pilot in the world: land that airplane on a pitching deck in the middle of the ocean. As with everything on a carrier, a lot of people have to do their job just right to make the difficult look routine. The pattern is flown tight. After the crosswind leg, the turn to final is continuous, with no base leg. Approach speed abeam the fantail, and rolling out to final, a third of a mile behind the ship. At that point, you're under the watchful eye of the LSO, or landing signal officer, who stands on a very special platform near the fantail. Further up the deck, you spot a series of lights known in Navy parlance as the ball. Both the ball and the LSO are there to help keep tons of screaming aircraft on the glide path. The object of the pilot's attention is a series of cables stretched across the deck. In most cases, they are aiming for the number 3 wire. It's been compared to feeling like you just hit a wall of muddy sand as tons of airplane come to a halt at about 400 feet, seemingly very close to the edge of the deck.
You've got 1,000 things going on at once and 1,000 things that can go wrong at once, and it's just basically having to put the airplane in a very specific point in a very precise manner.
The pilot advances the throttle all the way forward, just an instant before hitting the deck. And here's why. That is called a bolter, and full throttle is what is needed to get the airplane back into the air for another go-round. Another potential problem occurs when the deck is fouled. That is, the landing aircraft does not have a clear and safe path in which to complete the trap. That forces a wave off. Again, it's full throttle and try again. Bolters and wave-offs are a normal part of carrier operations, but they are not taken lightly. This sort of thing burns up a lot of extra fuel, of which a landing aircraft does not have a lot of. If it happens enough, a tanker may have to go up. But as with anything, practice makes perfect.
We generally find that when we first get out here, our grades aren't as good and our performance isn't as good because we haven't done it in a while, but we start at a level where, at this stage of the game where most people would generally aspire to from coming out of the RAG and that kind of thing, and then work to try to be, the best that we can.
Now, well into the afternoon, it seems that everything is in sync. And when it's right, there are few things to compare. All of the landings are graded, and each pilot knows how they're doing in relation to the other pilots in their squadron. Since pilots aren't the most modest people on Earth, rest assured, they work very hard to get what is called an OK pass.
I like to think of us as we're like a highly tuned athlete, like a gymnast perhaps. And for a gymnast to want to go out on his beam and do a perfect 10, I feel that way when I get behind the ship and want to do a perfect landing.
Slowly now, the scene begins to change. The sun heads for the horizon with increasing quickness. And darkness overtakes the carrier, imposing a whole new set of rules, and yes, dangers. An eerie red light begins to bathe the deck, and activity takes on a surrealistic glow. Red light is the safest way to operate at night. In fact, you'll find yourself in a lot of trouble if you get anywhere near the flight deck with a bright light. Night operations are probably the most challenging aspect of naval aviation, and yet it is the part of the job that the pilots enjoy the least. But for the spectator, there is no sight more impressive than the night launch. Judge for yourself. Sitting in the cockpit is no less exciting an experience.
You can feel the you know, the rumble of the airplane, and you can see the glow of the afterburners in your mirrors back there, and of course those are all just real reassuring things at this stage of the game. But initially, like you alluded to earlier, they're a little overwhelming.
With the afterburners punching a hole in the night sky and blazing into the abyss, the next phase is already underway. An aircraft on approach for the night landing. This is the eye of the needle, that single most stressful event other than combat for the pilot. The night landing separates, in a cruel way, those who have it from those who don't.
I heard it expressed one time as, imagine standing on one side of the room, turning off all the lights and trying to dive across the room and land on a postage stamp on the other side.
This is the rite of passage for the naval aviator, and to pass through it is exhausting, but very, very satisfying.
Hear a lot of jokes, you know, that you could train a monkey to do this eventually, but I'd beg to differ with that. It takes a lot of gumption to get out there and do it, for one thing, and we work real hard at what we do, and you know, to be able to do it well and do it right, and it's something to be real proud of.
During the night, the clouds rolled back in, and the deck was dusted with a light rainfall. The Tomcats sit like nesting birds of prey on the fantail, their dark gray finish made even more so by the leaden skies. But further up the deck, there is activity once more. Another launch, airplanes leaving the cat again. And again. And again, until the air wing of the USS Carl Vinson is razor sharp and ready. The world of the modern aircraft carrier. It is made up of specialists, men and machines concentrating on individual tasks that together make up the carrier battle group. The E-2C will be the high-altitude platform for command and control. The A-6 intruders will deliver the ordnance. The F-14s will fly combat air patrol and handle long-range interception. The A-7s will take care of flak suppression. And the EA-6B will protect them all, providing an electronic shield during the most critical minutes of the mission. It is called the Prowler, the most effective electronic warfare airplane in the world today. In just a few minutes after launch, the enemy will know that our airplanes are on the way, picking them up on radar scopes that clearly show their position, altitude, course, and speed. Radar is fundamental to detection and weapons control. An enemy is going to use it to control guided missiles and aerial intercepts. It is instant combat intelligence, and the enemy would be blind without it. The job of the Prowler is to take away the enemy's eyes, blind that radar with a blizzard of jamming emissions. You see, there are many radars employed by armed forces all over the world. It makes for a density of electronic emissions that boggle the mind. The EA-6B can jam enemy radar without affecting its own forces. The Prowler is the only aircraft dedicated exclusively to fighting naval battles of electronic warfare. The crew of an EA-6B is made up of a pilot and 3 electronic countermeasures officers known as ECMOs. The airplane is basically a big flying computer, the ALQ-99. Here's how it all works. Emissions of enemy radar are picked up at long range by the sensitive equipment on the Prowler. The ALQ-99 analyzes the signal and shows it on a cockpit display. The ECMOs continuously react to the signals, and when the strike force is within range of the radars, jammers are activated. If an unknown radar appears, the ECMO can assign it a frequency and jam it on the spot. Since the first Prowler was introduced in 1972, it has come of age by meeting the steadily increasing challenge of electronic warfare at sea. Today, its speed, range, and maneuverability are compatible with strike aircraft. In short, it can keep up when the battle gets hairy. Prowler crews are trained at Whidbey Island Naval Air Station in Washington State. Prowler University, as it is called, turns out ECMOs and pilots with a high degree of expertise and motivation.
At any time that we have an overheat situation that exists in the constant speed drive, a temperature that exceeds 260 degrees plus or minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit, on the caution lights panel you will have a CSD light that will come on.
First, there are the specifics of flying one of the Navy's most sophisticated airplanes. Then specific work begins on the jamming system itself.
Airborne now with the pod.
Finally, there is an exacting schedule of flight training in a computer-controlled simulator that can provide realistic scenarios for the crew members. Instructors working through nearby consoles can call up programs to simulate any onboard failure or malfunction. The ECMOs are given a workout too, dealing with an array of radar threats.
Well, the EA-6B is the only tactical carrier aircraft that has a true electronic warfare capability. We have a set number of them organic to each of our air wings and to each carrier. And they're programmed right in with the strikes, the defensive tactics, the entire air wing operation. They're very, very important. And we will be dependent on them, as we said before, in most scenarios.
For example, if a Prowler has to protect the fleet, it can orbit at high altitude, working with the E-2C gathering information to relay to the force commander. If the enemy is looking for the carrier battle group with long-range radar, that signal can be jammed as soon as it's picked up. The enemy can't see us, but the signal tells the Prowler where he is.
EA-6B tactics during the mission will be to jam the acquisition, GCI, fire control, and AAA radars. The NAVRA profile, a couple of considerations, will be silent to 60 nautical miles, and we'll turn our jammers on at that point, leave them on for the remainder of the route until the egress. We'll stay with you over the target, come on out and pick you up on the ride out.
The other job of the Prowler is the strike mission.
The overall objective is to put this airplane and its capabilities in position with the strike group in order to afford maximum protection for our strike aircraft going in and out so that we have maximum effectiveness, minimum losses.
Knowing that the EA-6B is along, even in the practice problems that we run on a day-to-day basis for training, gives us all an increased feeling of confidence. The airplane is tremendously capable. It does the job that it was designed to do, does it extremely well. I'm very glad they're on our side.
Initially, the enemy is showing only routine radar surveillance. The strike group forms now and begins the ingress to target. Momentarily, both sides are electronically blinded by terrain. But the enemy has been alerted. And when the planes are in the clear again, the prowlers find that the enemy has switched on more radars. The attacker's course, speed, and position are clear. Next, ground control intercept signals appear, showing that the enemy is launching alert fighter planes. At 60 miles, the Prowler turns on the jammers and the attack is on.
We know we've done our job when we launch out on a strike with 12 or 15 aircraft and we come back and we still have 12 or 15 aircraft.
The Prowler of today is being continually updated for the needs of tomorrow. The airplane has room for extended performance, and each year money is being found in a tight Navy budget to buy EA-6B Prowlers for tomorrow. In the meantime, the airplane of today is enjoying great success with the Navy and the Marine Corps. The job of the Prowler is to save ships, aircraft, and lives. And for the foreseeable future, no other aircraft in the world can match it.